This is iFanboy Pick of the Week 814, brought to you by iFanboy listeners just like you who are boosted and thoughtful and helpful, considerate, and just getting by. Hello, welcome to iFanboy Pick of the Week, episode 814. My name is Conor Kilpatrick, and this is my co-host, Josh Flanagan.
I am Josh Flanagan. Thank you, Conor Kilpatrick.
You're welcome. And we are iFanboy, and every week we read a bunch of comics. One of us picks their favorite from that stack of comics. That's the pick of the week. We'll talk about that book, other books from the week, the patron pick, the listener mail. We just have a good time talking comics. We hope you have a good time listening about comics. And that's the whole point of this whole endeavor. Here's your spoiler warning. This is a review show. There'll be some spoilers. Josh, you had the pick of the week this week.
I did have the pick of the week. And a lot of weeks we will be like, oh, there was too many books, or it's hard to find a pick, or whatever. And I was like, this is a pretty good week.
Yes.
Wasn't too many, wasn't not enough, had some choices. Ultimately, I went with Iron Man number 16, which I think will seem like a bit of a head.
41.
Oh, God, I'm so sorry. Is it on the cover?
It's on the script and the cover, yep.
Yeah, okay. Sorry, you know what? The revolution does take place, but sometimes around midnight when you're scrambling to finish everything, and you're like, okay, I'll write this down, so I got to get to bed. Sometimes we forget about the revolution. But that doesn't mean that I don't care about it. Mm-hmm. So this is the issue of Iron Man, written by Christopher Cantwell, drawn by Julius Orta, with colors by Frank D'Armata. And I don't even need to tell you who's on the letters. I bet you could guess without even looking at the script if you're out there. It's right. It's Big Joey Caramagna.
It's Julius Orta with no R.
Oh. Ota. Oh, I see. Anyway, the last issue was more or less the conclusion of the Korvac saga. That's a different story. The Korvac story that's been going on since the beginning of this, and I think that this series of Iron Man has been sort of hit or miss. There's been things I liked about it. There's been things where I sort of lost the thread. So what we have here is at the end of the last issue, Tony has cosmic powers. He is like unto a god, and he's like, I can do some good with this, and so he comes back to Earth. And what you have here is a story of egotism and good intentions.
Not with Tony Stark.
Yeah, I know. Egotism and good intentions, meeting with the godlike. And what I thought to myself is, has no one ever done this?
Right.
Has no one ever imbued Tony with the power cosmic? Because it's so obvious of a story that would need to happen. And he comes back and...
Well, he's the one good guy who is like Dr. Doom. Right? He thinks he knows the best for everyone, and he's already tried to put a suit around the world. He's already tried to impose his good intentions, but
he really is trying to do the right thing, and like self-aware of it and whatever, but only to a certain extent. So, he comes back and he looks menacing, and he has Kirby dots coming off of him, and all the Avengers show up, and they are really interestingly and rightly handling him with caution. They have seen this before, with other people. And Captain America's like, hold it, buddy. we're very concerned. And I just really liked that they were immediately on alert with good, like they let you know, because we're in Tony's head basically the whole time. So we know what he's thinking, and it is not malicious, but you see the other side of it. Just from a storytelling craft standpoint, I was really sucked into this, especially after not being all that interested by the end of the last one. I didn't care about Korvac.
It went on a little
all.
Long. The Korvac saga went on a little long.
Yeah, so did the COVID saga. And
all of those sagas.
And so his big plan is that he's going to give everybody his intellect. And the pages that followed after that was just people in their lives learning to deal with it. And people, there's sort of funny bits where, in Queens, a couple has an argument and then they talk it out because they have the intellect to see exactly what's going on. There's a guy working on a car and he's like, oh yeah, we can supercharge this with ion displacement inhibitors. And the other guy's like, that's good. What's that going to cost? $600. Yeah, go ahead and do it. Or actually, no, he says not, just do the oil change. Yeah. Either way, the kid the kids playing baseball. There was pages of this, and I was eating it up. It was really fun. And then the last thing is you have a supervillain called the Big Wheel. I don't know if I've ever heard of, but I was a big fan of the Big Wheel because he has a big wheel that he drives around in. And he sort of has a thought, and you're like, oh no, this is going to be used for criminal intent. And what he's really doing is he's just super excited and he's about to solve traffic, but everybody overreacts because he doesn't think ahead about how to deal with it. And it was every time the issue did something that you thought you had seen before, there was a swerve on it that just gave it a fresh thinking. And I think that I have missed Christopher Cantwell in these Marvel books to a certain extent. I think this is the only one he's doing regularly right now. He did the United States of Captain America, which, again, I thought was hit or miss. But this guy is the one who I always sort of want to show up for. This Chris Cantwell, this guy who has shown me time and again that he and his partner on *Halt and Catch Fire*, but in comics, he's been so good at dealing with these high-level ego intellect people, which is, this is Joe McMillan, which is one of my favorite TV characters ever from *Halt*. He's doing that kind of thing here when intelligence meets good intentions meets ego, and then you put it in the Marvel universe. And I just thought it was handled really fun. And I was very engaged with it. At the end, I went, wow, I totally enjoyed it. And I did not expect to. Now, we are going to talk about other books that are very good. And there are other books where I'm like, I should make this the pick of the week, shouldn't I? But I didn't because you get the feeling. I got the feeling, and that's why we are talking about Iron Man 641.
Yeah, I mean, I think we enjoyed this series more in the beginning. There was a pick of the week in there somewhere early.
Yeah, I think it's the first one.
I think the Korvac storyline went probably twice as long as it should have, which sucked some of the air out of the series. But this was a nice return to the original feeling of the book. And if I had any criticism, it would be that I thought the coloring was too heavy-handed and dark.
Frank Darmada. Yeah, I can see that. This Frank Darmada, who when I hear his name, I primarily think of the Captain America, the Brubaker thing, and that had that also. It kind of fit with that.
And
but you're right, the whole thing
worked with that series. This feels like there's a filter over it all, and I just didn't
it does
like
feel like the whole thing. If you flip through it, looks like the entire thing takes place at just after dusk, like everything. And I don't know if that's partially heavy inks or whatever, but yeah, you're totally right. It does have. So that.
it just bugged me that, but it was. I mean, I really enjoyed this story of this, and the Julius Ota art is fine. He's solid. I wouldn't say spectacular, but does the job. It just I thought the colors didn't service the art all that well. Mm-hmm. But you're right. I mean, if you're going to do, let's give another character the power cosmic, that Tony's the most interesting one to do it with, because I like the bit where he gives everybody his intellect and reads like, I feel dumber.
It's great. And then it's of course the ending being that Patsy, by the way, Patsy Walker, Hellcat, has, I think, been the standout of this series. Like, this is a really interesting character who
it's sort of a
has been around.
Patsy Walker book.
Yeah, exactly. And I'm totally fine with that. And I don't know, she's got her own thing going on where she actually seems like a unique character in the middle of all this. And she calls in Doom at the end, of course, because Doom's not going to be affected. He's got
he only does it to New York.
Right.
He only gives the intellect to New York as a test case before he does it to everybody.
That seems like a bad choice, by the way. Out of all the places, like, how about just try Omaha? Let's start there. New York's got a lot. It's got a lot of issues. I mean, it's a complicated person in therapy.
So she goes for help, but I don't want to say she's the girlfriend. She is Tony's girlfriend, but she's not the girlfriend character. She has her own situations going on. She does not suffer Tony's bullshit, and is organizing the. I don't want to say the resistance to Tony, but she brings, in the beginning, she's brought everyone together who is concerned about him, and I think she's one of those fun Marvel characters that doesn't get the spotlight. So when she shows up, she's cool. And
also, she's a bit of if you're a reader, she's a bit of a blank slate. Yeah. I mean, there might be a lot of history, but if you didn't read all the comics from the 70s and 80s, then you probably don't know everything, like myself. So she can be a thing, and you can turn her into, a character who is what you need that story to be, and hopefully it fits with what she was before. But
Frogman is an easy joke, but he's funny in this book.
It's a great design. It's a really funny, and he's the one guy who showed up in his costume.
Can I get
super
promoted?
Awkward.
Certainly, we'll talk about that later. So, yeah, this was good. You told me this, you were leading this way, and I hadn't read it yet, and so I was about halfway through. I was like, yeah, okay, I see why.
Yeah, no, it was a really fun issue. I hope that this arc doesn't go on too long and just does this story well. Yeah, but I never really doubted this pick because I just that out of nowhere thing. However, I thought long and hard whether I should make the Human Target 4 pick of the week because you could have made a very good argument for it.
I mean, I thought this was the best comic I've read in years. I really thought this was. I thought this was terrific. This issue, yeah. First of all, there's a lot of great things that happen in this book. This is terrific from top to bottom. The cover, where first of all, great iconography, but the Blue Beetle's punching a bunch of dudes out, and their dialogue is saying the creators' names, and the guy saying Greg Smallwood is passing out, so we don't get his full name, is very funny. But this book has been all about the Human Target, Christopher Chance, investigating his own murder. He's been poisoned, and so you have the investigator and victim as this. This is basically a Philip Marlowe story. This is a noir detective story in the DC universe, a Black Label book, so it's out of continuity. And he's been investigating all the members of the Justice League International because they're the only ones that went to this planet where the poison was. And so each issue has been investigating a different member of the team, and with Ice as his sidekick because she is the femme fatale character, but not the... In detective fiction, there's the good girl and bad girl character that comes into the office of the detective, and she's the good girl character.
Or is she?
Or is she? But what I thought was great about this issue was, first of all, it was another showcase for Greg Smallwood. And I think the way it's just hard to say the faces are terrific, but the faces are terrific. I mean, no one's drawing faces like this.
You could make an argument right now that he's the most exciting artist probably to both of us.
Yes.
If he puts a book out. I mean, and also, and like just saying artist is correct, but also the way that we say artist in comics books is sort of limiting.
Yeah.
But he does the whole book. Like he doesn't letter it, but he colors it, and very specifically page 9, which is the title page. When the bug takes off and we see the top of Cord Tower. I don't know if that's what it's called, but it sounds right. Sticking out above the clouds. I mean, just the coloring, everything. And then there's a huge old Fantastic Four style, DC presents the Human Target Chapter 4 to this great stage of fools. And I did that page turn and I was like, Jesus. Yeah, it was
I know.
Graphically everything that it did harken back to a nostalgic form of comics and what we thought. But either way, like, it's striking, and the coloring and the whole thing's beautiful. And I asked Tom about it because I was like, because every once in a while he will do something amazing, or one of his books will, and I'll be like, this is great. And I just need you to know that. And he goes, that was all Greg Smallwood. Like the entire, like this, none of that stuff on this page was in the script. He just did it.
What's
the letters
really
himself.
I mean, yeah. What's really great? There's everything great. We're talking about a fucking title page, but everything is great about this. And to me, what's great is the contrast of the super graphic, like 80s throwback style of the lettering and the title cards versus the very realistic sort of painted. He's not painted, but sort of more realistically rendered art in the background. So it's a really nice contrast. And this is about as goshy as you can get with a title page. It's mostly just letters.
Sure.
I did the same thing. I turned the page and I was like, ooh, that's exciting.
It's wonderful. And I think that one of the reasons that I didn't immediately make this the pick of the week is that it's not, other than that title page, it's a slow burner. I mean, every page in this is sort of heavy with possibility and mystery, and it's light on the surface, and then something's going on underneath, and you can't quite get what it is. And so, it's part of a very long and delicious, sumptuous meal, but it isn't the showstopper part.
Well, that's where I disagree. I know what you're talking about with the mystery. So, in terms of character work, so this whole issue, he goes to question Blue Beetle with Ice, and as soon as he asks Blue Beetle, "Hey, did you try to kill Lex Luthor?" Because he was pretending to be Lex Luthor. Blue Beetle does not stop talking the entire time, and then he says that in the book. It's not like a big revelation on my part. He does not stop yapping his mouth the entire time. And so while that's happening, he's completely oblivious to the fact that Christopher and Ice are exploring their attraction to each other very subtly. And I just loved the progression of them sitting in the back of the Beetle, on that jump seat together. First it's real close, and then he's got his arm on the back of the seat, and then she holds his hand, and then she puts her hand on his hot thigh. And I was like, this is a fucking sexy book without it being overtly sexy.
Sure.
And then, they go back to the hotel, and Ted's getting hammered, and she's like, I'm going to go up to bed if anyone needs me for anything. And I was like, oh boy. And then it ends with, he goes up to his room, and she's there in a little robe. And, Ice was never the sexy one. Fire was the sexy one. She was the overtly sexy Brazilian bombshell, and Ice was the demure, cold Norwegian.
Ice princess.
And so here she gets to be a different kind of character. And I was just, by the end of it, I was like, oh my gosh, it's hot in here? Like, it was, because it wasn't overtly, it wasn't like boobs in your face. It wasn't, it was all very subtle, and
what was like
glances from her to him, and minor touches, and then at the end you get the then things happen in the bedroom, but it was just like, ooh, hello, I was fanning myself.
The thing that oh my goodness, I have the vapor. So the thing that I locked on, you're not wrong about that. And the thing that I locked on was that, he's watching, and there's something going on. Ted is talking a mile a minute, and at first you are taking that to be like, oh, this is humor.
Yeah.
And then at some point, God, I don't know his name. Human Target.
Christopher.
Christopher says, he's like, he just brings out, he's like, since I mentioned this, he hasn't stopped talking.
Yeah.
And you're like, oh, that's a tactic. And then he realizes something else, and he said, and when so you're talking about that, she has her hand on his leg, and he moves it over, and then she moves it deep on the inner thigh, not on the dick, because that would be crass.
Right.
But it's in there. Like, you're gonna feel something.
The intention is what it is.
Right. And he says, and it's all a lie. And I was like, oh, what's going on? And in a good way. Yeah. And I was like, well, no, so I have no idea. It's very difficult to understand who the villain is right now.
We don't know, because we're only in issue 4.
True.
If we're following the traditional arc of a noir detective story, we're not going to know at the very end. And
right.
Is it Ice or is it not Ice? Because sometimes it is the girl that comes in the office.
Right.
Sometimes it's not. It just depends on the story.
But when he says, and it's all a lie, I'm thinking, so one of these people or both of these people are involved with it, and he's falling for it. And that isn't the part, I think, although there's a double entendre, there's double meaning, not entendre, but double meaning with things deeper. And it's that she is so powerful that she's just letting him do his thing all day and just kind of holding back. She's pulling her punches in a superhero sense so that Ted can do his whole thing. Like, is that the lie, or is there more to it? Super nuanced.
Yes.
And I think that, and again, so going back to it, like, I feel like this is part of a whole, and I want to read it as a whole, because King writes comic book novels. They're serialized, but that's what this is. So it's real good. And the more you talk about it, and the more that we come at, like a Tom King book is the kind of, he's figured out the genius of that all comic book writers need to know is, if you can get away with it, is make sure that you only work with geniuses,
right.
And he's managed to do that. And, Rick Remender is, I think, the other guy who I always think of as like, he only works with great people. Yeah. And that doesn't mean that he's not good, but he's smart enough to know that is where you're going to shine through. Yeah, totally. I was, I'm listening to the audiobook of Led Zeppelin, which is the Bob Spitz book. Did you ever read that big Bob Spitz Beatles book?
Yes.
Okay, so he wrote a Led Zeppelin book, and I don't love Led Zeppelin. He didn't love Led Zeppelin or whatever. But there's a bit in it where Atlantic Records signs the band, and the guy, Jerry Wexler, has never heard them. And he said that his only rule about signing bands was that every band that you sign needs to have a virtuoso in it. And the reason for that is that virtuosos don't play with average players. They always play with great players, and that's how you know a thing's going to happen. And I thought, oh, that's this approach to comic books. It's the same thing. You find, a genius, you find an amazing artist, and that brings the whole thing together. And the workaday nature of comics, and the sort of like huge bench that they have to get things out on time is one thing. But if you can get yourself to the position where you can control that, it changes everything.
And I'm just looking at Smallwood's
long
art.
metaphor.
No, I was looking at Smallwood's art while you're talking, and it's amazing how he can draw realistically, but you can still see the quote unquote pencil marks. He does this. This is all done digitally, but you can see the pencil lines on the shading, but it doesn't take away from the fact that it looks like you're looking at more realistic art. It's really a fascinating confluence of styles.
Yeah, I mean, there's that impressionistic thing to it. That's this is why
amazing.
people like, I don't know, Rembrandt. I think that's about right. Yeah, no, but it also it's a way that it's embracing the form.
Yes,
it's not trying to hide the form. It's not like I don't really like photorealistic, stuff. I don't really like Alex Ross all that much. That's the closest example. But when you're sort of painting and coloring and trying to make it look as real as possible, I like this, which is. It's cartoony and graphic, but also it's saying like these are drawings, which is what a comic book is. It's
it's like Esad Ribic.
It's a formalist.
It's like you can still see the mechanism behind the art, even if the art doesn't look like a cartoon.
And you like the bit where like a line overlaps where it's supposed to be. Mm-hmm. Or let's see. Okay, so page 26. They're sitting in the bar drinking. Well, Ted's fallen over. The first panel. You see Ted's suit collar? Mm-hmm. The line goes past the other line, and everything overlaps a little bit. And in a world of perfection, in a world of where most artists, and you need, editors controlled this to a certain extent, they would erase those things because they would be considered mistakes.
Yeah.
He's able to, for whatever reason, time that when we are making comics to his cloud or whatever, he's able to like leave those things that are not mistakes, their style, their choices.
Yep.
And I think that really stands out.
It's a beautiful book, and this is already. Yep. I'm already more excited for this. I mean, I liked Rorschach a lot. We talked about that when it ended, and what was the other one that we just finished? Oh, Supergirl's almost finished, and then there's the one before that. It doesn't matter. The point is, I'm really excited for this now. Whenever it comes out,
why can't we think of it? Strange, Adam Strange, Strange Adventures.
Right. That would end up being not as successful for me, but this one's already, rocketing up my favorite list of his books because the Smallwood art alone is just terrific.
I also think it's interesting that you could know Justice League International and really get something out of this, but you can also not know it as well.
You don't need to at all.
Be just fine. Because I know about it, but I didn't read all of it.
It's not playing on anything from like other than their personal relationships to each other.
Right.
It's not playing
but it's in here. Yeah. You could read that and it would give this context, but you don't need that context.
For sure. Yeah.
Yeah. That's important.
The Death of Doctor Strange, #5, the final issue in which Doctor Strange lives and then Doctor Strange dies.
I have really enjoyed this series, all the way through up until the point where we're like, oh, no, we are going to take him off the stage. And I was like, is that necessary right now at all?
No.
Also, what is the point of doing any of this if at the very last minute he goes, no, I have to go. I have to sacrifice myself. So everything that happened was for nothing.
Right. They managed to bring him back through convoluted magic stuff. His early 60s or 70s, 60s self.
60s. Yeah.
Brings him back.
Ditko.
The current Doctor Strange, and then they save the day, defeat the bad guy, and then he says, "Oh, but I gotta go because magic requires a sacrifice." And that's one of the things I hate the most about modern Doctor Strange comics. Was
that Wade or Aaron?
I think it was Jason Aaron, but I could be wrong. It's part of the thing I talked about last week about heroes putting a limitation on the hero. Like, you can't just let Doctor Strange be awesome and use his power. He has to have a sacrifice when he uses his powers. He has to have. There's got to be a price to pay, and now the price is he has to die again. And he hands the cape and the amulet off to Clea, his girlfriend, who I didn't even know was his girlfriend. And I've been reading Doctor Strange straight for the last 5 years.
No, I knew that because of it. That's come up, or on other things or whatever. I don't mind it as a concept. I think it's good, but I think it was leaned too heavily on, and then instead of letting it go, it becomes... This is the thing with all these things, is that somebody comes up with an idea to tell a story, and then everybody runs with it. So you tell a symbiote story, and you're like, well, here's the thing about it. And it's like, okay, I get it. You either like it or you don't, But then it's there. It's stuck to it. It's the spider totem. For years, everybody's dealing with it. And the idea that the original person had... is it wasn't strong enough to carry 5 years worth of stories. It was strong enough to carry 10 issues.
Right.
I will say, just on the other side of this, is that graphically, the Lee Garbet's art, I think, was a delight and a joy. The colors by Antonio Sabella were fantastic. I really like, there's a bit where Ditko Strange is sort of standing in the same panel as current Strange, and I just sort of looked at the two designs and I thought, no, that's the way that you update a costume. Mm-hmm. That's the way that you sort of keep the original intention and modernize it, because you can see the differences, but they're subtle enough.
The red cape is a much better choice. It's much more graphically striking. Right. I do like those crazy gloves. I mean, I know he doesn't need them anymore because the original Strange's hands are all fucked up, so he wore the gloves. But they got Kirby dots on them, and so
yeah, they do.
I always did like those gloves. But you're right. No, you're right. This is an instance where the updated costume is better and more striking than the original.
But you also get to see like Steve Ditko, Jesus, 60 years ago.
Yeah.
More or less, did a thing, and Jack Kirby did this over and over again, just made a couple of choices that just work, and they continue to work, and I really like seeing that.
Yeah. Yeah, I just, don't need another one of my favorite characters taken off the board.
Yeah, I mean, at the end of the day, it did feel like, well, what did we just do all that for? And now... It's not a problem that it's a woman. It's not a problem that but it's all of a sudden you've taken a character who we've spent all this time, and honestly, we haven't been getting to know Doctor Strange for all that long. He was not around until the last, basically until the MCU. He was not a big presence in comics more than 10 years ago.
He was in Bendis', like he was.
Yeah,
he didn't.
That's
have
when
like
he came back, though.
Yeah.
Right. That's when he came back. And so we spent this time getting to know him and the biggest character, and it's like, all right, now he's actually been established as one of the big characters again, and he's gone.
Yeah.
And now you've got to learn some other character you don't know anything about or have any connection to or care about, and that's going to be Doctor Strange now. And it doesn't really matter who that is other than, like, I don't know who this. So basically it's a new character, and you're not always into Marvel Comics for that. You're into Marvel Comics for the characters you recognize.
Or you grew
I
up
get
with.
there's business reasons or whatever, but it doesn't leave me with an excited feeling.
In the movies, Wong took over, and now it's Clea. Just can't catch a break.
Mm-hmm. Wong is great in the movies, though. I like him way better than Strange.
Batman Catwoman special #1.
I know Wong, though. That's the other thing.
Yeah, of course.
Like, we are familiar with that character. So when they take over, there's, same thing with the Sam Wilson. That worked better because you knew him.
Yes. I don't know.
Anyway,
I know nothing about Clea. Batman Catwoman special #1, written by Tom King. This is actually and I don't know why they didn't just publicize it this way. This is a tribute to John Paul Leon. Mm-hmm. And I don't know why you have no idea that from the cover, other than the fact he drew the cover. But John Paul Leon died of cancer a few months ago. And
he's our age, maybe a little younger.
Yeah, very young, but also like an industry darling. Like not...
Right.
Perhaps not a sales darling, although he should have been, but like everyone's favorite artist in comics. Everyone who works in comics. Yeah, comics artist, like writers, everyone loved him. And I loved him. He was one of my favorite artists. And so, sad obviously for his family and his friends, but sad for the industry as well. And he had been in the middle of drawing a story, a Batman Catwoman story. I don't know what it was meant for originally, but so they have the first 13 pages here, and then the next 7, his best friend Bernard Chang finished, and then there's an essay from Craig Busick who did the Batman story, and there's an essay from
John Bogdanov, which is the one that really got me.
The John Bogdanov was really good.
Yeah. I also like. I'm sorry. This is totally.
And
like,
Michael Davis, who helped start Milestone, where John Paulion was discovered originally. Like it was
the Bogdanov one. I was like, I hope that's true. I really hope that he was blown away by this kid.
That's what you hear all the time from all these people is that he showed up basically fully formed, and they were all like, well, fuck. You know?
It's like
I'm not that
reminds
good.
me. It reminds me of, well, he said a couple of things that were, like John Bogdanov, when I hear that name, I'm like, oh, that was a sort of workaday Superman artist from the early 90s and 80s. And you could see it in your head. You can see the mullet, like it's a fine comic book artist, super gauchy. But he's in here talking, and he goes, he had mastered this chiaroscuro style, and you think, oh, right, these guys are all really, not all, but a lot of these are really accomplished artists who knows what they're doing, but they're working in a style. And he's like, I just went for a walk and I walked around the city and I thought about it. And I was like, I just want that to be true. Because it's so apocryphal that you think that can't be true, but you want it to be. Anyway, you were
No, but I'm just saying, so if you are mired in the Batman Catwoman series and think this was some sort of offshoot special, like it's tangentially related to that story, but really you're not reading it for that reason at all. You're reading it because it's a tribute to John Paulion, and it's some of his final work. And I thought, like, as a story outside the tribute aspect, this was like my favorite issue of the special.
It felt to me like I was like, is this the end of Batman Cat? Like this could have been the end of it.
Yeah,
it's sort of the coda, the credits, as his credits are about to roll, the end of 6 Feet Under or one of those kind of great.
Well, yeah, basically we follow
endings.
all the characters to their end, including Catwoman, which we haven't seen in the book yet. So. You're right. Like, do I need to read any more of that other book? Because I haven't really been enjoying it, especially since the art change happened. But here, this was like a nice overview of the entire thesis of that book, and looked beautiful.
Yeah, yeah. He had
I
done all the layouts for the most part.
Yeah, he had done the finishes for the first 13 pages, and then he had done the layouts for the next 7, and Bernard Chang finished over the layouts. And this was nice. I mean, his art is beautiful. I always loved his style, very minimalist. He's like Darwin Cook, like fewest, but in a completely different style, but fewest lines possible.
Yeah, but like ink.
Yeah,
like
heavy
what he
inks,
does.
heavy
He does
darks.
Heavy ink. It sort of reminds me of like a rougher Chris Samnee.
Yeah.
Or Chris Samnee combined with somebody else. It took me a while to appreciate that. Not to say I didn't like it, but. Like now I look at that and I understand exactly why I like it, and I understand exactly why other people like it. When I was very young, I want to say Earth X was the first thing I saw him on. I liked it, but I didn't really stand out to me. But it's one of those ones as you get older, and you will hear, like, pay attention to what artists say is great art. And that people ask us, like, how do you know? Pay attention to what they say, and then look at those things and see what the things are about that sort of stand out. And then all of a sudden, it opens up, sort of like a flower, and you go, oh, I see it. Then you see it in other things. But
there's also a little Riddler story in the middle that he did that showed, I think it was in black and white. Yeah, it was that he wrote and drew. And there's a lot of that, like very heavy inked, minimalist, but totally beautiful style in that particular story. It was. I mean, this was a, and then there was like 100. Not 100, but there was a lot of pinups that were tributes to him and his art, and from super big names in the industry. Again, this was totally just a John Paulion tribute. So if you didn't know that, here, you can go back and get it because it's big. It's meaty. It's like 90 pages or something like that. And I was happy to have read it. Yeah.
Yeah, no, it was delightful. It's like in the workaday part of going through all the comic books. I've said that like 3 times this today. I don't know why. In the sort of job of going through all your comics and reading them like we have to, I was like, oh, that's a lot of pages, but I didn't feel it at all.
No, it moved quickly, and I did. I'm looking at the John Bogdanov, which wasn't an essay; it was one of his pinups, but he turned it into an essay of himself walking around the city.
It's okay.
I thought that amazing.
It illustrated the point he was making.
Yeah,
it really was. I didn't even realize you said it. I was like, hey, he did draw. He just drew himself, but is part of the story that he's told, which I want to be true.
Yeah, he fucked him up.
It reminds me of I'm going to give you a classic rock. When Hendrix showed up the first day, literally got off the plane, and then that night or the next night he went and he played at the Bag of Nails, which was a club, and everybody showed up. Like, and they're there, and like Terry Reid, who was a singer at the time, was there, and he just noticed. He's like, "Fuck, why is everyone here?" Like Clapton comes in, and Keith Richards, and Brian Jones, and they all come in, and Hendrix, and he opens. I'm sorry, I love these stories, but he opens. He goes, "I'm gonna play a song. It's a big hit. You guys like it?" And he goes into Wild Thing. Now they all hated Wild Thing. It was a terrible pop song to them at the time, and then they all just like fell apart. They were like, "Oh fuck," and that's what the stories about John Paul Leon were.
There's also Ram v. John Paul Leon question story. So there's just a lot of great stuff in here from him, and it's obviously sad for everyone, but this was a nice tribute to him, and it's just strange how they did not really market it that way.
You know what? It's fitting because it's a guy who's who's an artist, and people don't necessarily, he doesn't move, so the folks who worked on this got to do the thing, whether or not they promoted it or not. I don't know that it matters. But
I just mean people might have missed it who weren't. Right. We're thinking it was just another tie into the Batman Catwoman story instead of something else.
Yeah. That's fair.
Let's talk about Detective Comics 1050, which it's ironic because I think it was it last episode or two ago we were talking about the backup stories and how we could take them or leave them and it doesn't really matter to us. It was an email question.
Yeah.
Well, this issue, there's first of all, this book's coming out weekly for at least this 12-issue story. And the main story from Mariko Tamaki and Ivan Reis, it's fine. I mean, it's okay. But the big draw for me was the two backups. The first is Matthew Rosenberg's. He's been doing this House of Gotham backup, so we're on chapter 4 of that. He's been doing it throughout this whole run of this new arc. And it's been a flashback to old Gotham and this particular kid. We don't know why we're following him yet, but this was a great story in which this kid whose parents got killed by the Joker ends up at one of Bruce Wayne's orphanages, and they end up at Wayne Manor under the thrall of Scarecrow, and they want to go kill Bruce. He wants them to kill Bruce Wayne, and Bruce isn't there, so Robin has to save the day. And Alfred at one point whacks a kid with a frying pan. It's like, are you allowed to show that? But it was a really fun Robin story. And then the big draw though was the second backup story, which is the prelude to the book I'm super excited for, which is World's Finest, written by Mark Waid, drawn by Dan Mora. And it seems to be first of all, it's Mark Waid's return to DC. And second of all, it seems to be Mark Waid bringing it back a little bit of Silver Age / Bronze Age to the DC universe. And this was it's a prelude. It's a story of Poison Ivy attacking Metropolis, and Batman and Robin show up to stop her, and Superman's there, obviously, and then Metallo gets involved, and it's a whole rollicking, awesome, good time. That looks amazing, because Dan Moore is one of the most exciting artists to come along. It says this story is to be continued in Batman Superman World's Finest #1 on sale in March. I don't think it'll come directly out of this, because it's more about shadowy heroes in the background, but it might, and if it does, then you'll know the prelude was in this issue of Detective Comics. And I'd like to say that, one of my bugaboos, I always talk about is the costumes, but, DC doesn't know what the fuck to do with the original Robin costume. Mm-hmm. That they are scared of it, so he's had about 15 different variations of it and since the New 52 started, and they flash back to the original, the old Robin days. And what's really funny was in this particular comic itself, you had two different versions of it. Like, the Matthew Rosenberg story had the traditional Robin costume, the old classic Robin costume. And then the Dan Mora one is a variation of it, which I think is okay. Of all the variations I've seen, this is probably the best one, in which he just has green pants. And the rest of the suit's the same, but it just has green pants. He even has the booties. And if you're going to do it, that's fine. That's the best way to do it, not the stupid, awful ones they've been doing before. It's just funny that within one comic, they had two versions of it because they just don't know what to do with this costume. They just need to get over it. This is beautiful. This Dan Mora back up with Mark Waid. I'm so excited for this book. I'm so excited for like a happy throwback, Superman, Batman comic.
Mm-hmm. All right. Moving along. Peacemaker, Disturbing the Peace #1, which Peacemaker is the big deal right now because he was in the Suicide Squad. He's the breakout character in Suicide Squad, which he wasn't. And he's got a TV show on HBO Max, which is fine. And so I looked at this real quick, and I saw Garth Ennis and Gary Brown, and I went, well, this is some 2000 AD goodness. And I am pleased to announce, it wasn't my favorite book of all week, but it was not because it's Garth Ennis, I assume it was not the TV version. You know,
No,
it wasn't
that's
the
what I heard,
movie
yeah.
version. It was a much grimmer sort of story about this kid who has just been through trauma after trauma as a kid, and then it turns out, you know, that he really had a lot to do with the things that happened to him. And it was fine good. You know, like it was really well done, and I love Garth Ennis, obviously, but you know, I kind of didn't care too much about the character, but I thought it was really interesting, and the craft was good. Gary Brown, you know, 2000 AD artist. I'm always gonna. This was it looked and felt like a you know, early 2000s Vertigo book, basically. So it was good. If you kind of, I don't know anything about this character. I didn't even know this was a real character.
Well, yeah, he's the inspiration for the comedian.
No shit.
Yeah,
That makes sense.
yeah, he's the Charlton inspiration for the comedian.
Ah, well, there you go. Yeah. So, I did find it more interesting than the TV show.
Did you watch the TV show?
I watched the first episode with my wife because we really enjoyed the Suicide Squad movie, actually. And it was fine, but free review. I didn't really feel like I wanted to watch a down and out superhero show because I've seen it a lot.
Yeah,
And it wasn't very interesting to me.
I get it. I haven't watched it. I didn't like the movie, so I didn't watch it. But
Okay. It was. I mean, the pilot was written and directed by James Gunn.
yeah,
So, you know, good pedigree. I just didn't. It wasn't bad. I just didn't want it.
who was your breakout character in that movie?
You're asking me. I'm trying to remember it.
It's okay.
I actually thought. I thought it was a really good Harley Quinn movie.
Yeah,
You know, as far as these things go, and I liked the ensemble. So I liked Idris Elba in it. I liked. You know, Sharkman was fun because it was a big dumb silly movie. Yeah, I actually had kind of forgotten about it and watched the show, and I was like, "Oh, right." I liked the ensemble element of it, and I know that's, you know, that's kind of a cop out. But if I think about any single character, it wasn't super interesting. But when you put them all together, I thought that worked really well. I also like the balls of just killing everybody at the beginning.
yeah,
That's great. You don't expect it.
Superman 78, number 6 is the final issue of this miniseries written by Robert Venditti, drawn by Wilfredo Torres. It takes place in the Christopher Reeve Superman world, and this was just a delightful miniseries.
That's exactly the word I was going to use. This was delight.
It worked on every level that the Batman one isn't working on. This really feels like it's part of that world. Wilfredo Torres does a great job of drawing these actors without being slavish to their features. The Goonies make another appearance, cameo appearance.
I did notice that.
But Superman saves the day. You know, Brainiac, or played by David Bowie, has bottled up Metropolis, and Superman beats him, but it causes the city to fall out of space. Superman has to catch the city and bring it down, and you know, it felt nice to be back in this world that we can never go back to, and he got everyone involved in this issue. You know, you had Jor-El and Lara, and you had Lois and Perry and Jimmy, and even a little bit of Lex. Everyone got a little chance to.
And you were there too.
Yeah, exactly. I loved his Lex in this book. It just everything worked, and if they wanted to do more of these, I would read them.
And it wasn't like, oh man, this is amazing, but it was just a new issue would come out, and I actually got a little behind, so I read a bunch of them in a row, and it was just delightful. It was a good time.
I agree.
Yep, absolutely that.
Keep doing it is what I say.
Mary Jane Black Cat Beyond #1 from Jed McKay and art CF Villa, with color by Eric Arcianiega. Ooh. Of course, letterer Travis Lanham.
For once, it's you.
This falls back into that. You know, some of the issues of this are really good and interesting, and some aren't. I find that the ones that don't have Ben Reilly in them tend to be the best ones. So you had like a really that great Misty Knight wing. You know, that was
Colleen
really good.
Wing, yeah.
So in this one, the Hood shows up in Peter's hospital room and says, "You got to go get me my hood." And so Black Cat and Mary Jane.
Or I'm going to shoot
it.
Peter.
Right. But so they have an adventure together, and Mary Jane, you know, perhaps the comic overestimates her physical ability, but whatever. You know, and they come up with a plan to steal the thing from Hammerhead, and I thought it was a really interesting and mature thing at the end to have them, you know, be the current and the ex, but there's not really any bad blood between them.
Yeah,
They
there's no
talk about
jealousy.
it.
She's like, I'm not trying to steal Peter back. I just hate that everyone thinks of me as this bad girl ex and not someone who really cared about him and who was important to me.
And she's like, that was a really important time to me, and I love him. And Mary Jane's not threatened by it, and she's like, I get it, and I just thought it was a fun.
And then it was
story
then it was a nice little notch. She's like, I was the bad girl. I stole it from Gwen. Like,
right,
so
yeah.
I thought that was a wonderful conversation. I just love the fact that Jed MacKay has found a way to keep his Black Cat story going. Like, he's had like 2 volumes. There's been a couple of specials. She keeps popping up. It's just like he's managed to get like 20 or some odd issues out of Black Cat.
And it's important to understand though that is in contrast to a period of Black Cat that was terrible.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
Turning
When she
her
was
into
the
the
crime boss.
kingpin.
Yeah.
It was not the character you want. I mean, it's very difficult to draw a line in the sand between Black Cat and Catwoman. Like, it's pretty much the same thing.
Yes.
But whatever. I mean, there's just different interpretations.
And I really
of the
like her
stories
as a
that we get to
character.
read.
I always liked her. She brings a dangerous and fun and sexy element to Spider-Man, and so this sort of Jed MacKay-led renaissance has been great. I've read all these issues. I've read every one. I think this is. I like this a lot for all the reasons you said. It was a fun and unexpected little heist they had to do. And the Hood wasn't threatening Peter because he's Spider-Man. He was just threatening Peter because clearly he was important to Black Cat. He's like, I'm going to shoot this dude unless you go get my hood. And I liked this quite a bit.
Parker Robbins is Brian Vaughn. It's Brian Vaughn character.
Yeah.
He's a great villain. And he's not overused, and he's both street level and super powerful, and he's threatening. He's a great villain and I like when he shows up because it's kind of always a surprise because it's not too often. Like, I can't think of another more recently created villain, who I think is sort of fits in. He was in that Hawkeye Winter Soldier story.
Yeah, yeah.
No, just Hawkeye. It was a Ronin
Free
story.
Fall. Yeah.
Great. Yeah. Great. Just a great villain. And I don't want to see him any more than I do, but I like him.
So those were the books we wanted to talk about. There was a lot this week. I had like 25 books. We could have talked about more. I thought Amazing Spider-Man was also really fun. There's a lot of good comics this week, but we have to move on to the Patron Pick. That's where the patrons at patreon.com/iFanboy can vote to add a book to the rundown. And in an overwhelming way, I think the most votes ever by a book was Saga 55, The Return of Saga after a 3-year hiatus from Brian K. Vaughan, Fiona Staples, and Phonographics, Image Comics, the much vaunted Saga. So when this book originally came out, I don't even remember when it was. God, it was a long time ago.
It was millions of dollars ago.
We really loved it. I think it was pick of the week, like 4 out of 6. The first issue, like the very beginning, we were super into it. My own interest started to wane, and then I think somewhere along the line, I switched over to trades, and I don't even know where that was. I tried to look for them. They're in my new apartment. I got these big bookshelves, and I put a good portion of my trades out on display, but probably only about half of them. And so Saga didn't make the display cut. It's in one of 8 boxes. I just couldn't pull them all out of the closet. I didn't want to open that can of worms, so I couldn't find where I dropped off. But I probably dropped off maybe in the 30s.
I don't even remember. I have no recollection.
Because
they started
guessing.
to be
I'm
spaced
completely
out.
Guessing. It could be any time. It could have been. But my point is, I had no idea what was going on here. I guess now the father's dead. I didn't know that. So, spoiler for me. But so I was totally lost. Not totally lost, but a good portion lost. Because from when I left off, I think the kid was still a baby, and yeah, I don't know who this dude is. With this.
I don't know who the dude is either, but nothing else was a terrible surprise to me. We did a bit of a time jump here.
I mean, like as a single issue, as like a story, I had no problem with it because I know enough about the world, or at least I remember enough about the world to understand the context. But I just as an episodic thing, I was like, I don't know what's happening anymore.
So you would have or wouldn't? Would you have read this?
No, definitely not.
Okay. Yeah. I would have, but it's one of those things where it was really exciting for a while because, I mean, if Brian Vaughn wasn't the best of that generation, he was as good as the best.
Yeah, he was up there.
Like in the 2000s, I can't think of bad comics he did. He did great comics, and he does great issues. And this came out, and it gave you that feeling, and it was something new, and Fiona Staples is another virtuoso.
Yep.
And so, but the inconsistent shipping and the day, all the stuff. And understandably, they had said, we are going to do hiatuses here, which I get. I don't like. I don't think it makes, but in the book publishing world, whatever. But it got off that, and 3 years is a long time. 3 years. By the way, 3 years that felt like 1,000 years.
Yeah, the three worst years to do this. But I mean, it's definitely a choice to come back without any kind of help. And I get that, like, you're writing for posterity, so if someone's reading this in 20 years, they're not going to have had that 3 year break. But still, like, no recap page, no nothing. Like,
yeah,
and you gotta have to remember all this. It's been 3 years.
So it gave you the feeling, but it didn't feel very satisfying to me.
Mm-hmm.
It's just like, hey, look, this has been going on. All right, we're done now. And and I didn't move to trades. I love Brian Vaughan in the issues, but you're gonna need more to win me back. Basically, I think is where we're getting at.
Did you go all the way through? Like, did you read up through 54?
Yeah, I never stopped. Although it's possible that I missed something at the end because I just wasn't as into it. You know what I mean? It's possible that but I don't even know. It's been so long, I don't remember. And I can barely remember stuff like this that happened last month.
Right.
So, I think I also have another, and this is like, I don't know if it's a criticism, but it's a thought that I have.
Yep.
There is a very graphic sex scene in this.
That's his thing.
I know, but
especially in this book. That's been.
I know in this book, but I am going to go ahead and point out that I don't think it's helpful because it brings all the focus away from the characters in the story in a certain way. Because you're just like, wow, she's grabbing his dick.
Yep.
And I find myself thinking about that. And I don't mean thinking about fucking. I mean it's distracting in a way to the story, and I don't know what purpose it serves. If you can tell me a purpose, like if you think back to when Alan Moore did Lost Girls, this was actually his statement about it. He was like, "We don't show sex, we don't do it, so I'm going to do this."
We don't treat sex like violence in the comics, yeah.
Right, and I get it. But in this, we live in this society, in this world, that there is a line you cross when you're going into, pornography from erotic or whatever it is, and I have no problem with that whatsoever. But if your aim is to tell a story and get along with these characters, and yes, we all perfectly understand that sex is a part of life and whatever, it's distracting. It just is, even if it's true. Does that make sense to you? Like, because I found myself thinking about that. I
don't feel that way, but I understand how you feel that way. I mean, to me, it's been the part of the iconography of the book. Remember, this is the big ogre dick book, and it's always been like, sex has always been forefront in this series. As much as the book called Sex, the Image was putting out at the same time.
Sure, but if you were watching a show on HBO, right, and you're like, this show's great, and there's characters, and there's nudity, and there's sex scenes, but then like all of us, and I know it's been here all along, but I haven't read it in years, so whatever. And all of a sudden, they just cut to a hand job. You'd be like, what the fuck? That's what it feels like to me.
Yeah, I don't know. It's like if this was like Batman, sure, but like since it's so ingrained in what Saga has been, it didn't bother me.
Well, you're very continental, and as you know, I am famously prudish.
Yeah, you're a prude. Everyone knows that.
Oh no, I mean,
you're famous on the internet for it. I was trying to cover up the nipples and stuff. So this was tough to rate. I was thinking as I was reading it, because like I said, as a single story, I was like, okay, I get it. I'm following it. I'm enjoying it. Did Fiona Staples switch to digital?
I assume she was always digital.
Yeah, it just seemed more. Something about this seems different. I don't know if it's just sort of the evolution of her style or not. It just seemed like the lines are heavier, the outline lines. Mm-hmm. I don't know. I could be wrong. Again, I dropped off probably 20 issues ago. So it was hard to rate because as a single issue, it was fine. I enjoyed it. As a chapter 55 of a book I haven't read in 20 chapters, a little lost. But, like you said, this is written by one of the great comic writers of the last 25 years and drawn by a incredibly talented artist. So
I have no problem with it.
No, I'm just trying to figure out how I'm rating it. I don't know what to do. I don't know what I'm doing.
That's it. So, but it feels like, and here we go, it feels like too little too late. You know what I mean? Like you lost that feeling. It's like you went to a concert and it was amazing, and they went off the stage and you were waiting for the encore, but it took them a year to come back, and you're like, it was really good, but I kind of want to go home now.
So does that mean you're not sticking with it?
I am, but I'm just saying it hasn't given me the feeling that it used to give me.
You mean you've lost that loving feeling?
It has. I mean,
Whoa.
Also, I, as a reader, have definitely come into the idea that, like, unless we're talking about a mainstream superhero book where this is an endemic feature of it, something that is endless and goes on forever, it doesn't seem to have an endpoint in mind. I don't really have the patience. Like I want to hear a story. I want to know, and if it's 70 issues, great. If it's whatever, but like I don't know where we're going.
Did he say this is ongoing forever?
I don't know.
I think
but
he
it feels
said that
like
at one point, but I can't imagine that's true.
Right. But I mean, either way, like it doesn't. It's about what it feels like.
Sure.
I want to feel like I'm in. I'm not going to say 3-act structure because you can get away with that, but I want to know. I want to feel like I'm headed somewhere, and I don't feel like I'm headed
I don't remember
anywhere.
exactly, but I feel like I don't want to say the original run of this book, but the pre-hiatus run, I remember feeling a little bit like it sort of treaded a lot of water.
Well, you know,
but I don't remember. I have a hard time.
Brian Vaughan famously wrote for Lost.
I don't have any. I don't want to make any statements here because I honestly don't remember enough about it. I would, if I ever came back to this, and I assume I would, I would have to go back from the beginning and read it, start from the beginning again. Mm-hmm. I just don't remember enough.
Which probably would be quite pleasurable.
Yeah.
You know, if you read them all at once, I'm looking at it. I have at least the first 2 hardcovers over there. From back when Image was sending us solid,
Yeah, I looked in my closet
copies.
and I was like, it's not one of these front 4 books because they're in clear bins, and I was like, it's got to be one in the back, and I just can't take these out right now. So I would like to figure it out, but it's not going to happen anytime soon. Ratings on Saga 55. The Return of Saga, ratings out of 5. I'm giving it 3.5. 3.5.
4. 3.5 and 4.
And I'm not sticking with it in issues, but you are.
Right. Yeah. I'll read them.
All right. Patreon.com/iFanboy. If you're a patron, you can vote to add a book to the rundown. Thanks to everyone who voted. And also, if you just want to support the show, Patreon.com/iFanboy is the way to do that. There's lots of ways you can support us, but that's the main one. We try to make it worth your while, not just to keep the show going, but give you some little extras for being a patron. That's why they get the monthly hangout where me and Josh and Ron do talk about goofy nonsense for an hour with the patrons. That's where they get the communities in Facebook and Discord. We try to make it fun for them and worth your while. Hopefully you enjoy it. We always have stretch goals. Our next stretch goal is obviously adding comic book TV coverage to our list of shows. People are always asking us, "Hey, you going to do a show on, Stargirl?" It's like, well, if we hit the next stretch goal, we'll start doing some shows on the TV shows that are out there, and there's so many of them. You can find all that information at patreon.com/iFanboy. We thank everyone who's a patron. Also, iFanboy.threadless.com is where you can buy t-shirts. We have our 12 designs, including our new Gosh design. You can get these designs not just on t-shirts, but also on all kinds of items, sundries. T-shirts and sundries is what our new slogan is going to be. I actually have a t-shirt on the way now. I bought myself another one. So
which?
I bought myself another Nothing Makes Sense, Nothing Matters shirt, which is our by far most popular design.
Have you worn yours out?
No, I just decided I wanted a long sleeve one as well.
Okay.
I have a t-shirt and I wanted a long sleeve one. It's cold. It's the winter. So
I wore my Clint is Dead yesterday, but I was bummed because, again, it's friggin' freezing. So I felt like I was wasting it, but it is also a very comfortable, soft shirt. So fair enough.
It's a great, the tri-blend is just terrifically comfortable.
Oh,
so
quality.
I found one at threadless.com. Check them out. We're all really proud of those designs, and thank you for buying them. iFanboy.com/support is our digital PayPal tip jar. So if you are a eccentric billionaire and don't want to become a patron for obvious security reasons, you can just drop a couple $100 million into the PayPal jar, and we'll thank you for that. Or even just a couple $1 million if you don't want to drop a couple $100 million. But I mean, look, if you don't have the money for it, that's fine. It's just a couple million. That's cool. iFanboy.com/Amazon is our link for the books that we talk about on the Booksplode show, as well as the general Amazon link. You can do your shopping that way, and it helps us out. And also, finally, you can find bookshop.org links. We've partnered with bookshop.org to help local bookstores, and you can find those links usually with our Booksplode shows. And if you want to help support local bookstores, you can choose a bookstore to support, or you can just support the general fund that goes to the local bookstores. And they thank you, and we thank you. And those are the ways you can help support the show. Keeps the show going, keeps us on the air, and doing this. And we do appreciate everyone who helps us out. Thank you. And also, here we go. Patreon.com/iFanboys. $5 or higher patrons get a superpower live on the show. I'm just going to pass out from talking. Like these two gentlemen, thank you for being patrons.
Ever since I asked you where you were last night, you've been talking uncontrollably. What are you hiding, Conor? Dan Prosser has the ability to make others believe they have seen ghosts.
They have seen.
So he like they will see, like he can be near them and a ghost. He can make a ghost appear to them, and they will believe it is 100% real. They're not real ghosts, but he makes them believe they're seeing ghosts. And let's say that he can control what those ghosts do and say, and the appearance of them. Yeah, it's like he's got like a psychic ability to make other people see ghosts that they believe are real but are not real, in fact.
So he is what the Walter Peck in Ghostbusters accused him of being.
Okay.
He creates hallucinations, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I guess so. No yeah, he had no dick. It's true.
That's the important thing to remember.
Can I just say, like, I know that there are a lot of people out there who are say, oh, I love Ghostbusters, I whatever, and the Church of Bill Murray that's come up. But I want to point out that you used the name Walter Peck and had it immediately available as if it was something you think about all the time.
I've seen the movie 100 times.
And I respect that. I've too, but I wouldn't have been able to. It would have taken me a second. You just had it there.
I had Peck. I had to dig deep for Walter. And it's early in the morning. It
didn't show in the way you said it, though.
Well, because while you were talking, I was like, what is his first name? So he makes hallucinations. He controls the hallucinations. He animates them. That's cool. And so part of the hallucination is they really believe it.
Sure.
Okay. Jonathan Moran has an area of effect power in which everyone around him is wide awake. It's a stimulant power. Like everyone is awake and focused. It's like everyone's been given speed. Everyone is.
Wait. So is it actual awake and focus, or is it like meth?
He's not giving you meth, but everyone.
No, I know, but like that gives you like the illusion of being you're being effective, but you're not necessarily being effective.
He's actually doing it. Everyone is awake and extremely sharp and focused. It's like if they're at their peak of their cognitive abilities in the daytime. Like he creates that area of effect around him.
It's like cocaine, but with none of the drawbacks. Like
none of the great ideas.
Right. Yeah. Well, right, but great.
It's just like everyone is like super sharp and super on it, super awake. It's like a 20-foot area of effect power.
All right, that's good. I like that. So if you would like to get your own patron power, make sure that you sign up at iFanboy.com/patron. Is that right? Patreon.com/iFanboy. You know what? I could use Jonathan right now because I just blinked out there for a minute. It's terrible. Time-wise. All right, let's do... All right, I think... Okay, let's just do the first one. I would like to do the second one. We'll see where we are. Ken for the Great White North writes in and says, which of the big two won, quotation marks, each of the last 4 decades, 80s, 90s, 2000s, 2010s? I say DC won the 80s, Marvel won the 90s and 2000s, and DC won the 2010s. I don't know if I can answer this.
God, this is
a long
question,
right now.
Josh.
Well, let's go with our guts and see what it is. So, I think he's right about the 80s.
I mean, maybe.
If you think about,
you
think about the stories that stick around, the John Burns stuff. I mean, you got that on both sides, but
there's two different things here. If you're just talking about pure sales, Marvel's won all of the decades.
Okay, I don't.
No, I'm just saying. I don't want people to think to say, "Well, Marvel sold more." If you're talking about pure sales, Marvel's won all the decades since the '60s.
So the way that I thought about and understood the question was, creating memorable and lasting stories. And so that being the case,
who creatively won the decade?
I mean, Watchmen, Dark Knight Returns, Justice League International,
Crisis on Infinite Earths, yes.
V for Vendetta. It's not even close.
Yeah. No, I agree.
Not even close.
If you're talking about creatively.
90s. I mean, 90s, I think you do have to go with Marvel.
Yeah. Marvel Knights, at the very least.
Oh, yeah. I didn't even think about that. I didn't even get that far. Okay, so then 2000s.
Also
It's Marvel again.
Yeah, with
It's the Marvel
Bendis era.
Yeah, and the outcropping of that Marvel Knight stuff in the late 90s, you know.
I mean, you have a close race with Warren Ellis, Wildstorm stuff.
Wildstorm wasn't DC at that point, was it?
Yeah, it was.
I guess it was late night. Okay, and also, I mean, you could realistically say that a lot of the stuff from Marvel Knights really was the stuff that came from Vertigo. But in the end, who took the best advantage of it? You know, Marvel did those kind of stories and changed a lot of things that we're now seeing.
And I think it's DC, Marvel, and then to 2010s, I think is a push.
Is that a sports term? I don't know.
It just means they both.
You don't know?
It is. It's, there's no winner.
It doesn't. Yeah, I agree with that. I couldn't tell you in the last 10 years the ones that we have most closely focused on. I couldn't tell you because
DC went New 52, and that was somewhat of a disaster. But there were really interesting things that came out of that. You did have some great runs that came out of that. And then you had stuff that came after that. Black Label has been really interesting.
Vertigo.
Yeah. It's superhero Vertigo. But then Marvel's had some good stuff too, but also some, that's when the movie stuff took over into 2010s for Marvel. And the movie universe sort of started changing the way Marvel looked and felt.
I mean, like, and this might be just the way that we have had to experience it, but I have a really hard time thinking of, like, classic, wonderful runs from Marvel in the last 10 years. Like, it's just it's an ongoing onslaught.
You had Thor's, Jason Aaron's Thor run was a classic run, which was through most of the 2010s. They're there somewhere.
I know, but it doesn't feel like one. They feel like an equal measure. You could find them anywhere.
I used all of my brain power on William Peck. I have nothing left to stretch out.
It was Walter Peck. You really did fuck it up.
Wow, I did fuck it up. See, I used it all to get Walter Peck, and then William just blew all my synapses.
It'd be great if you got the name completely wrong. I used all of it to
Peck
get to
really fucked me up.
Steve Bergenthal and who?
Walter Peck. Walter Peck.
My bad.
See, I have nothing left.
Let's do it.
For me, it's DC, Marvel, DC in the 80s, Marvel 90s, Marvel 2000s. It's a push for 2010s. I
agree with. I'm there with you.
Okay.
I'm gonna do this other one really quick because it's a nice memory that I have.
Okay.
Brad from Exeter, California says, like many people of a certain age, our age, I grew up on Calvin and Hobbes collections, and they still have a special place in my heart, as I suspect they do in your hearts as well. So my question is, would you consider Bill Watterson among the greatest cartoonists of all time? Don't even need to answer that. I would put him in a class as Darwin Cook, but what do you think? Thank you for this great show.
It's interesting. First of all, strangely enough, at work this week, Bill Watterson came up in a random conversation.
I thought you were going to say stop by.
Yeah, he came by. It was awesome. He drew everybody a cartoon. It's interesting in my head. I don't equate comic artists and cartoonists, newspaper cartoonists, and I know they're basically the same thing, but I just don't.
They're not.
I don't compare them. And I know that comic artists have drawn newspaper strips,
and vice versa.
It's just, to me, the skill is a little different.
And
even though it's all drawing, the storytelling is different. And
for years, like in the gold and silver age, like the comic guys wanted to get into the syndicates
because it was more
to do the strips.
Made a lot more money.
And it was much more respected and blah blah blah. Yeah. Kirby. I mean, it's fair to say Stan Lee made a lot of his money in his career from doing the Spider-Man strip. Yeah.
With Romita,
that
right?
Said, though, I do put I do put Watterson among the greatest
he's the great
strip artist of all time.
He's in the top. He's in the top 5 for sure.
Yes.
Maybe the top 3. Schultz is probably number 1.
Yes.
Maybe. I mean, there's a lot of.
Jim Davis.
I haven't done the research, but there's a lot. He's probably the top 3.
I loved Garfield. Don't get me wrong. So, all that said, I did want to bring up this. This gave me a thought that I wanted to approach. When I was, I want to say 10 or 11, I was going on a camping trip because I go every summer with my grandma, and I went to my comic shop because I was really. So I was 11. I was really into comics at the time, and the guy said, I want something to bring with me on this trip. I had something to read, and I was thinking I would get a trade paperback. And the guy at the comic shop pulled the Essential Calvin and Hobbes and said, "Take this, you'll love this." I used to hang out at that comic shop, so they knew me fairly well, although I was a child and they weren't, but whatever. Hugely formative. And I said, okay, I'd never thought of it. Conor, you received and read the paper cover to cover from age 6.
Yeah.
I know that.
Yeah.
So you were aware of all those things, but I didn't. And I was transfixed. I read through that thing. I've read it again and again. It is my favorite comic strip of all time. It is one of the things that makes me feel best. And most importantly is that it was the first thing that ever gave me an actual appreciation of cartooning. And the reason is that I think that edition had a foreword by Charles Schulz. And he had pointed out some of the things that Watterson was doing with the drawings. And I'm 11, mind you. And so I always have an aptitude for this, but I remember this. And he said the way that he draws him in action and with his little dinner roll feet. And I went, oh, that's what cartooning is.
Yeah.
And it stuck with me. I think about it every single time. And that little insight into how art works is the seed of almost everything that we talk about today. And so I love it. I think it's one of the finest things that American art has ever produced, Calvin and Hobbes.
Oh yeah,
it's great.
I have the complete hardcover collection, but I have, as a kid, in addition to reading them in the paper every day, I had 15 softcover, the essential Calvin and Hobbes, the best Calvin and Hobbes, all those different books. And I remember even as a kid, my brother's 3 years younger than me. We shared a loft bed in New York, and I would read him the strips from the book at night because he couldn't read because he was too young. Calvin and Hobbes is one of the great artistic achievements of all time. I
agree. What
he did blew away. I mean, Schultz is number one for a variety of reasons, but what he did blew away what everyone else was doing at the time, at least.
And I've read them. I've read them again many times. I've read them to my kids
over and over again.
And at no point did I fail to go, oh my God, this is just brilliant. It's just
not
better
just the
than
Sunday strips that he broke convention and the fully painted, amazing vistas. It's just the simplicity of the storytelling in the daily strips was unparalleled.
And the universality of the experience of those strips are getting to be 30, 40 years old now. And like I said, I've read them to my kids. My kids have no perspective about what, and they love them. It's all the reasons that you could love something like that. It's huge. I think, and I would say that's probably the same for a lot of people who, I know for Scotty Young, for example, people who came to comics, that is the manna. That is the source for a lot of people.
Especially
I feel very lucky.
People who are very specifically our age or older.
Yeah.
People younger than us are like, what the fuck? But
if you're younger than me and you don't know, do yourself a favor.
But also just the cultural significance of comic strips and papers. I mean,
right.
When major things happened, it was like news. If a major comic strip character died, in those longer running, more serious strips, it was like news.
Right. Yeah. Yes, it's true. That's true.
It was Far Side, Gary Larson. I mean, all of them. Anyway, I could talk about newspaper strips for a lot longer than we have time for.
Yeah.
Contact at iFanboy.com is where you can write in, or for this show or for the Media Explode. If it's for Media Explode, please put it into the subject line. Speaking of Media Explode, we had our January one, which was earlier this month. Came out early. Don't really come out at the end of the month. This one came out early, the part of the month, where we talked about what we've watched over the break, and we talked about the Beatles Get Back and the last season of Succession. The next Media Explode is going to be a sober and even-handed look at the Book of Boba Fett. That's what our plan is.
Sorry.
No, that's fine. And also, this past week, Josh and I reviewed Spider-Man No Way Home. Finally, we saw it in the theaters. We saw it and immediately recorded it and immediately put it out. We hadn't planned it to happen, otherwise we would have told you, but it came out this past week right behind the show in the feed. So if you want to hear Josh and I, I'll just fair to say gush over Spider-Man No Way Home. That's where you can find it, right behind this show. And then next month we have the next Talksplode. That's from Will. That's going to be, well, I'm not going to say who it is. You can bleep that out if you want.
No, it's Will Dennis. I'm going to talk to him next week.
Okay.
And
I know you don't like to say unless it's in the can.
Yeah, but I'm not worried. I mean, it's possible.
What if you get hit by a car?
It's not going to. Well, then I think I have a fairly good excuse. I don't think anybody's going to be like, you said though.
Will Dennis Part 2 is next month, and then also next month is going to be our Booksplode, in which Josh and I review the new Teen Titans, the Judas Contract, the new edition of that, in honor of George Perez. So you'll be looking forward to that. Josh has never read the new Teen Titans Judas Contract before, one of the most famous storylines from the 80s, like we talked about earlier. So it'll be interesting to hear Josh's perspective on that. I haven't read it in years, so it'll be good to read it again.
I would like to thank Conor for reminding me that I have to read that. Because God forbid I ever want to finish one of these fucking novels I have.
How you doing on Neil Stevenson?
I'm in the mid 50s%, I think. I love it, but I haven't touched it in a week.
Yeah.
You can find. I don't read at night though. That's the thing I don't do.
I read for like an hour or two at night every night. That's how I get through books.
I don't have that left. I've got to get somewhere with NBA 2K22, and that's what's important.
I see.
It's a problem.
I don't know.
You can find. I know. No.
I used to work at a video game company, Josh. And
I know.
I would have to tell people I don't actually own a video game console, which was a fun conversation to have.
I'm not a gamer, but over the pandemic, like I only play like one at a time, and I'll play it for a year.
Josh, whatever you have to do to get through the day in the pandemic, I don't begrudge anyone.
Exactly. No, I know, but it's but I would fall asleep immediately if I started reading at night. That's just not gonna do it. You can find all of our shows at iFanboy.com. You can really read through all the shows and all the writing and get the subtext of what is going on in our life at any point. We are not obscure. We are not opaque people. That is not our move.
No.
As well as the archive of years of comic writing, all that stuff, blah, blah, blah. You can find out what the pick of the week is before the show comes out at iFanboy on Twitter or at iFanboyComics on Instagram. You can follow Conor and I individually at CS Kilpatrick on Instagram and at J.A. Flanagan on Instagram. I've been really bitchy about comics lately on there. I'm gonna stuff that doesn't fit into the panels of the week because you can't make the panel of the week something that annoys you. But there's where that is.
Unless you got a good joke about it.
That's true. Subscribe to our YouTube page at youtube.com/iFanboy.
I don't want to interrupt you. What's been interesting on Instagram is we have been triggered into the Instagram algorithm over the last few months. So people who are not just our followers have been seeing our stuff either in the suggested posts or in the search. And so we're getting a lot of randos in the comments who don't know our vibe. And so it's been really interesting to see them alongside of our regular folks commenting. Our really smart, nuanced, deep thinking regular folks, and then I'll say more reactionary randos. It's been really interesting contrast.
There's a reason that we never hit the big time.
Boy.
And there's a reason that we like our specific audience so much.
Yeah.
Also, so it's been a lot of views and stuff. Where's my fucking check? Isn't that how this works?
Yeah.
Or my free shit? Can we influence somebody?
I don't think there's any money in this.
Oh my God. Do you feel like a sense of accomplishment? Do you feel like you are better a person than you used to be?
Oh, you know what? I do feel like I need to tell you about this new tea I've been drinking.
Well, what you should do is you should pair that with one of 4 annoying pop songs and just shoot a little video about it and about how cool you are.
Yeah.
And then also your face on its own, it needs filter help.
Oh my God, does it?
Yeah, it totally does. Subscribe to the YouTube page at youtube.com/iFanboy. Keep up to date on old video show re-uploads. We're just doing the minis now.
Yeah.
This past week, San Diego Comic-Con. I didn't update this. Did you
Last
update?
week was New Comics Preview for 7/30/2008. That was at San Diego, featuring Joe Casey mocking us. And then the second show this week was Paul Dini at San Diego Comic-Con 2008. So the next couple of weeks are going to be all interviews from Comic-Con that we didn't put into the main Comic-Con show. So there's like 4 or 5 coming.
I like that.
Yeah. So finally, if you like this show, consider leaving us a review or star rating on Apple Podcasts or wherever you get your podcasts, whatever aggregator you use. It does help people find the show. It helps the algorithm, helps us put us front and center when people are searching for comics podcasts. We thank people do that. Basically, you're our marketing department with no budget. So good luck. We have metrics you need to hit. There's going to be a quarterly review of your performance. And so tell your friends, tell your letter carrier, rate and review the show. And I just accidentally closed the script. I don't know how I did that. Wow, text crashed on me. It's never done that before. Anyway,
wow.
That's how the show ends.
I think that we should make a random video that's sort of it's just a shot of one of us at a desk, and like it's real quiet. It's and you're just looking at the camera and you're like, I mean, what am I supposed to do here? I mean,
what do I do with these numbers? What am I supposed to do with these numbers?
What this is? Are you telling me this is the best that you can do?
Are you even trying?
I mean, what are we even doing here? I hate to say it, and then you just look.
Right.
You don't say anything.
Sure.
You just wait for a response, and then send that to all the patrons.
Oh, we amuse ourselves. That's what we do here. Let's end the show.
All right. Yeah.
Thanks for listening. That was fun. I enjoyed this one. We'll be back next week. Until then, I'm Connor.
Bye, I'm Josh.